Okay, good. I can't hear you, Ollie, so. Can't hear you still, but anyway, it's fine. It looks like it's live. Good. Okay, everybody. So I hope you can all hear me, and you're all muted now. And if you want to say anything, ask any questions and so on, if you use the chat box at the bottom of the screen, and I'll get to see what you've got to say. And if there's any questions as we go along, I can try and address those towards the end of the session. And it'll be a half-hour session. And we are also streaming to YouTube. So if you don't want your picture on YouTube, you could turn your camera off. If you don't mind, then it's nice having some faces there as well, but it's completely up to you. And we're just doing that so that we can have this as a resource that people can go back to afterwards on the Breathworks YouTube channel. Good. So thank you all very much for coming to this session, which is specifically related to the Quiet Place resource that we've developed for healthcare workers dealing with the COVID crisis. And we're actually opening it out to all key workers as well now. Slightly different versions, but the same general message. And it really is Breathworks' way of saying thank you to all of you who are doing amazing work on behalf of all of us, either who are sick or who are at risk of being sick. It's really just remarkable what's happening out there. I've got a disability myself, so it's difficult for me to volunteer in the more traditional way, but this is something that I can do. So it's been really wonderful to develop these free resources for healthcare and key workers. So the idea is it's a space where you can come, you can get some tips, but you can also meditate. So a big part of this session is practicing together. But I'll just say a few things to introduce the practice. And some strange noise going on outside. I hope you can't hear that. Yeah, introduce the practice, and then the idea, I'm hoping the idea is this is a quiet place for you. You can come here and you can get some space, a little bit of ease, a little bit of relaxation, and to settle, because I'm imagining that many of you have got very, very busy lives at the moment. So we want this to be a place of restoration and coming back home to your body, your mind, your heart. So tonight we're going to focus the practice around breathing. Of course, you know, COVID affects breathing. I'm very aware of that, but nonetheless, being aware of our breathing can also be a tremendous support to help the mind calm. So let's just do a little exercise together, first of all. So I'd like you to make a fist with one hand. And what's happened to your breathing? And what I'm noticing is as I make the fist with one hand, my breathing contracts. Yeah. So now I'd like you to imagine breathing into the fist. And what does the fist want to do? It wants to release, doesn't it? So by directing the breathing into the fist, it wants to soften. So the fist here is a metaphor for any kind of contracted state, be it mental, emotional, or physical. So if we're very stressed, very busy, the chances are we're going to have some kind of tension in our experience. That's inevitable. There's no value judgment there. It's completely inevitable. But what many of us will do is we will then hold the breath as well. So we'll have the tension. It might be mental anxiety, emotion, or it might be some sort of physical discomfort, or we're knackered, we're tired. That will be inevitable. But what we very often do is we then contract the breath as well. So then we've got tension plus breath holding. And then we get more tension, more breath holding, more tension, more breath holding. And we get into this sort of wind up state of more and more stress and this inhibited breathing. And by noticing that, by coming into our experience and noticing where we've got that sort of wind up of tension and breath holding, using awareness, using mindfulness, we can then choose to soften the breathing. And if we soften the breathing, we will soften that mental, emotional, and physical wind up. in just the way when we breathe into the fist, it was quite natural for the fist to open. So a little slogan, which is very helpful in the midst of a busy life, is when in doubt, breathe out. When in doubt, breathe out. So you don't know what to do. You notice you're in a state, you're worked up, just breathe out. Yeah, just allow the out breath to go all the way out, and the in breath will take care of itself. You don't need to worry about the in breath, that will flow in. But what many of us do is we inhibit the full exhalation. When we're tense and wound up, we're not allowing the out breath to go all the way out. And the out breath is naturally calming and naturally soothing. So when in doubt, breathe out. That's something you can take into your daily life. And I write about that in the SOS room of the quiet place. And then we can also look for release in certain parts of the body, which can help us with our breathing. One of them is the buttocks or the bum, so to relax that area of the body. The belly, to relax the belly. And the other one is to relax around the base of the skull. Very often we get quite tight around the jaw if we're anxious, where we stick our chins out, we're rushing into the future. There's a lot of tension in this area. So just having a sense of pulling back and relaxing around the base of the skull, that will release the breathing around the jaw area. So those three areas of the back of the throat, the jaw, the belly, and the buttocks, those are crucial areas in terms of softening our breathing and releasing secondary tension and this wind up that I was just talking about. And then the other friend is gravity. So gravity is this remarkable force which is always drawing us down towards the earth. And we can trust gravity and we can surrender to gravity. And very often when we're getting worked up, stressed, busy, we've got the breath holding, sticking our chins forward, inhibiting breathing in the body, tension, and we're also pulling, very often we're kind of pulling against gravity. Often a lot of our awareness is up on the racing thoughts in the head. So we're kind of straining against gravity. That's very tiring. So just catching yourself if you're in those states without any judgment. It's like, this is normal when we're dealing with a crisis. But then we have a choice. We can simply breathe out, drop into gravity, and release the bum, the belly, and the base of the skull. And these three things can make a massive difference to the buildup of stress and tension. Okay, so I'll leave the introduction there, and let's do a little practice together, a little mindfulness practice, coming into the body, coming into gravity, coming into breathing. And then at the end, maybe you'll have some comments and we can have a little discussion through the chat box. So the first thing to do is to choose our posture, and you can do this sitting, you can lie down on the floor if you want to, you can do it standing. It's completely up to you. But the main thing is to be intentional. Again, very often we don't really think about how we position the body. But if we consider that and think, what would help my body most right now? What's going to help my mind, my heart, my body soothe right now? And then choosing that position. You can close your eyes if you want to. It's completely up to you. It might help just to calm the sight sense, to lightly close the eyes. And beginning to settle. So let's take a big breath in. And then on the out breath, allowing the out breath to go all the way out of the body, and then the in breath to flow back in again. Doing this a few times, the out breath going all the way out, the in breath flowing all the way in. And on the out breath, just imagine all the stress and the strain pouring out of the body. So we're releasing with each out breath. And have a sense of releasing down into gravity with each out breath. So settling down through the bottom if we're sitting on a chair, through the back if we're lying down, the feet if we're standing. What's it like to befriend gravity? And gradually allowing the breathing to assume its own natural rhythm. So not altering the breath in any particular way. Seeing if we can have this intention of not inhibiting the out-breath, but allowing it to flow out the body. And the in-breath to flow in its own rhythm. And let's see if we can relax around the buttocks. This softens the pelvic floor, and this is an important part in whole body breathing, to allow this part of the body to be soft, receptive to breathing. Just simply having a sense of relaxing the buttocks, that's enough. That will help this area soften. If we're sitting, seeing if we can allow the weight to drop down through this area so we're fully supported by the chair. And translating that if you're lying down or standing. And coming into the belly. Seeing if we can get a sense of the belly expanding a little bit on the in-breath, subsiding a little bit on the out-breath. Again, we're not forcing. Just bring to mind the fist and then the open hand. Can you have a sense of the metaphorical open hand in the whole belly area? So rather than gripping, we're allowing it to participate in the movements, sensations of breathing. Coming into the chest area, seeing if we can allow this area to participate in breathing, expanding on the in-breath, subsiding on the out-breath, having a broad, receptive awareness of this whole area. Coming into the back of the body. The ribs and the lungs are in the back as much as the front. Back breathing is naturally calming. Seeing if we can allow breathing to express itself in the whole upper back. And the lower back. What's happening in the lower back as you breathe? Maybe the shape is changing a little bit. Maybe there's a broadening on the in-breath, subsiding on the out-breath. And sometimes if we feel any emotions of panic around chest breathing, I find it really good to drop down into breathing in the lower back. I find that naturally very, very soothing. So that can be another friend to take into your life. Particularly if I also relax the buttocks, so softening the area, and then feels very grounding and soothing to breathe in the lower back, or to be aware of breathing or the movements in the lower back. Broadening to aware of the whole back, lower, middle, upper, breadth, length, whole back being breathed. Coming into the neck area, front, the back, the sides, and if we're sitting or standing but upright, let's see if we can let the head be poised on the top of the neck, not tipping forwards or backwards or side to side. And seeing if we can release around the base of the skull. So drawing the chin in just a little bit. Softness, base of the skull and the back of the throat, so the wind of the breath can pour freely into the body and out of the body. If we're lying down, giving the weight of the head up fully to the pillow or the cushion. Again, releasing around the base of the skull to the best of your ability. Not forcing, we're just allowing openness. Being aware of the top of the head, the sides of the head, and allowing awareness to pour into the whole face. Letting the whole face be soft, the eyes, cheeks, lips, tongue, jaw, soft. Now coming to the shoulders and allowing the arms to fall away from the shoulders. So the shoulders can fall away from the midline of the body. Arms fall away from the shoulders, having the hands supported. So the arms are resting in gravity. And letting the hands be soft, the fingers soft. Very often when the mind is rushing into the future, there's a kind of reaching in the fingers. And when we're going over the past, there's a kind of holding on in the fingers. So if we let the fingers be soft, then very often the mind softens and arrives here in the present, which is the only moment we can actually live. So letting the hands, fingers be soft. Allowing awareness to flow back up the arms, down the body, and allowing awareness to pour through the hips and down into the legs. So allowing the legs to fall out of the hips, fall away from the hips into gravity. Letting the legs be supported, whatever posture we've chosen. What's it like to let the legs rest in gravity in the moment? Now let's broaden our awareness to be aware of the whole body, resting here in gravity. Checking that the body's soft, and in particular the buttocks, the belly, the base of the skull. Let's see if we can get a sense of breathing in the whole body. Let's begin with the torso area. Seeing if we can allow the whole torso to expand in all directions a little bit on the in-breath. Subside in all directions a little bit on the out-breath. So being aware of the volume of the torso, filling a little bit, subsiding a little bit, filling, subsiding. And seeing if we can, in a sense, ride this with our awareness. So we're not forcing, we're not interfering, we're not straining, but it's this restful quality of allowing our awareness to come into the breathing body and to settle there. Every time we catch the mind running off, we notice that with patience, good humor. It's normal for the mind to wander, and we can choose to bring it back into breathing in the body. Now expanding, so this rhythm is felt in the whole body. Maybe getting a sense of the whole body getting a little bit bigger on the in-breath and then subsiding on the out-breath. 360-degree breathing. How receptive can you allow your awareness to be? And if your practice is continually going off and continually inviting the mind back, that's absolutely fine. Every moment when you choose to come back to awareness in the present and the body, that is your moment of mindfulness. Very often we just notice the arising of tension, the pulling away from gravity, again and again and again. And we just notice that again with patience and good humor, and choosing to drop back into gravity, drop back into rest. When you do this, we're bringing online the parasympathetic nervous system. It's calming, it's soothing. Now what I'd like you to do is just to begin to bring the body into movement, but seeing if we can keep this breathing soft. So I'm just going to move my hands around my wrists a little bit. And very often what you'll notice is there's a tendency to grip. But what's it like to let go of that tendency to grip and breathe and move at the same time? So choosing how you want to move. I want to stretch now. So of course my breathing is changing as I stretch. I'm allowing that, but I'm resisting the impulse to grip. And I'm staying in gravity, and I'm staying with this kind of more restful awareness to the best of my ability. Good. So it's 25 past. If anyone wants to put anything in the chat box, if you've got any questions, you could just put it in the chat box. Otherwise, I'll just say a few more things before we finish in 5 minutes' time, because I don't want to run over. I'm aware that time is very precious for all of you people. So the main thing I want to say is obviously that was 10-15 minute practice, but you can take all those principles into what we call micro practices. So all those principles you can take into a 1 minute pause, a 3 minute pause, and the principles are dropping down to the body, dropping into gravity, softening the bum, the belly, the base of the skull. That takes 2 seconds. And when in doubt, breathe out, letting the out breath go all the way out. So you can do that once an hour. You can do it every time you remember. You can do it when you're worked up. But you will find it soothing because you're immediately shifting into the parasympathetic nervous system. So even if you're really, really busy, you could just choose, I'm just going to stop for 1 minute, with that intentionality of stopping, gravity, breathing. And instead of being like that, you're like that. 1 minute of that it's remarkably effective. You might think, what's 1 minute going to do? It will do a lot. And if you do it regularly through the day, I find it very helpful just to remember to breathe into my lower back during the day. Just remember back breathing. That's soothing. And if I'm all up here and I'm all a bit agitated and heady, just dropping right down into the lower back, that seems to really help. So I've tried to give you something that's both restorative in this actual session, and then also to give you something that you can take into your life as little micro practices, because those principles are really, really simple. Come into the body, come into gravity, come into breathing, and particularly let the out breath go all the way out. Good. Got a couple of comments from people saying thank you. Has anyone got any questions at all? Just feel free to put that in the chat box if you want to. Otherwise, we can just sit here and quietly breathe. And that's quite interesting, actually, if we do that now, because we're not in an actual formal meditation practice. We could all have a go at transitioning these principles into just sitting here or standing here, noticing if there's an impulse to hold the breath now that we're no longer meditating, or an impulse to pull away from gravity, or an impulse to tense certain parts of the body. And what's it like just to notice that and to drop it? Very often with mindfulness, people think you have to do something, but in some ways we just have to get out of the way of, we put a huge amount of effort into creating tension, which is quite strange, and we just need to give ourselves a break. And maybe the just one thing I'll finally say, which is a very interesting thing in terms of how we're sort of wired as human beings, is we can't be inside this kind of embodied present moment awareness and lost in thought or rumination or worry in exactly the same moment. We just can't do that. We can't be lost and present at the same time. So if you notice, if you catch yourself being really lost in worry, anxiety, fear, rumination, regret, whatever it might be, just if you drop down to the body, it's like you're giving your awareness another object. So rather than the object being the thoughts, the object of awareness is embodied experience of breathing. And when you're doing that, you can't be lost in thought at the same time. You'll find that you just cannot do that. You might bounce back into thinking in the next moment. Many of us do that. And then you notice it again, I'm worrying again, and you come back into the body. A moment of peace, a moment of greater ease. And then the next moment you're off again, and you just keep coming back. It's a little bit like training a dog. Training the mind is a little bit like training a dog. It runs off and you call it back, and it heels for about 1 second. It walks at your heel, and then it runs off again. And then eventually the dog just trots along beside you. That's what we can do with our minds eventually. Train the mind so it's more present and calmer, clearer, and less agitated. Good. Okay, so that is now 7:30, and as I said, I don't want to run over. So we're doing this every week. So we'll see you next Wednesday if you want to come at 7 o'clock. Lovely to see you all. And those of you who we haven't seen you, lovely to know that you're out there. And yeah, when in doubt, breathe out. That's what you can take into your working week. And see you next week. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening.